Beatrice was 36 years old when she realized she had spent her entire life running on a treadmill she had created herself, a treadmill made of endless lists, impossible patterns, and an internal voice constantly whispering, "It's not good enough." She was a successful freelance graphic designer, had a stable relationship with Daniel for 5 years, and outwardly seemed to have everything under control. But inside, Beatrice lived in a constant state of exhaustion, anxiety, and a feeling that she could never, ever do things right. You know that feeling of reviewing an email 15 times before sending, redoing a project 3 times because it's not perfect yet, canceling plans because the house isn't spotless enough to host visitors? Beatrice knew this gilded prison of perfectionism well, until one day something changed. It wasn't a dramatic revelation or a sudden moment of enlightenment. It was something much more subtle and paradoxically much more powerful. Beatrice discovered the art of doing enough, of flowing instead of forcing, of finding excellence in simplicity. What happened to her over the next 18 months was one of the most profound transformations I have ever witnessed. She not only overcame paralyzing perfectionism, she discovered a completely new way to live, work, and relate to herself and the world. And the most incredible part? When Beatrice stopped obsessively chasing perfection, her life genuinely became closer to perfection than it ever had been. Today, I will share with you Beatrice's full journey, the moments of rupture, the revelatory discoveries, and most importantly, the practical tools she used to turn perfectionism from an enemy into an ally. Because if you have also ever felt trapped in an endless pursuit of perfection, if you have canceled projects for fear they wouldn't be good enough, if you have lost precious hours of life refining details that no one but you would notice, then Beatrice's story might be exactly what you need to hear today. The freedom that Beatrice found can be yours too. Let's discover together how. Beatrice woke up every day at exactly 6 o'clock, not because she needed to, but because she had read somewhere that successful people wake up early. Her morning routine was an elaborate ritual, exactly 10 minutes of meditation, coffee prepared in the same proportion every day, 20 minutes of exercise, a shower, and then she started working. Her apartment was impeccable, not the kind of natural, cozy organization, but that tense organization where every object had its exact place and anything out of place caused genuine physical discomfort. As a freelancer, Beatrice had a reputation for delivering exceptional work. Her clients adored her, but there was a hidden price that no one saw. For every project she delivered, she had created at least 3 different versions, spent hours refining microscopic details, and lived weeks in anxiety over whether the result would be good enough. Beatrice's perfectionism was not just wanting to do things well, it was a complex system of beliefs and behaviors that Greg McKeown, in Effortless, would identify as the opposite of what he calls effortless effort. Beatrice had turned every aspect of life into a test to be passed with top marks. At work, each project was an opportunity to prove her worth. In her relationship, every dinner with Daniel had to be perfect, every gift thought out in minute detail. In friendships, she was always the organizer, the one who remembered birthdays, the one who planned meetings with military precision. With herself, every day was a task list that had to be fully completed for her to feel productive. Beatrice didn't realize it, but she was paying an extremely high price for her pursuit of perfection. Physically, she constantly lived with tension in her shoulders, frequent headaches, and a fatigue that sleep never fully resolved. Emotionally, she oscillated between the temporary satisfaction of completing something perfect and the chronic anxiety that it would never be enough. In relationships, Daniel was beginning to feel suffocated by her need to control every detail of their moments together. Creatively, her projects, although technically flawless, were starting to lose spontaneity and originality. As Brene Brown described, Perfectionism is not about healthy growth and excellence, it's about trying to gain approval and acceptance. The turning point happened on an apparently ordinary Friday. Beatrice was working on a project for an important client, the visual identity for a wellness startup. Ironically, while creating materials about finding balance, she was on her fourth consecutive day refining the same logo. At 3 a.m., she saved version 47 of the file. Yes, she numbered each version when Daniel appeared at the office door. Bea, he said softly, do you realize you've been changing the same curve of the logo for 3 hours? A curve that probably won't even appear in the final version? Beatrice looked at the screen, then at Daniel, and suddenly saw herself as if she were outside her own body. There she was at 3 a.m., obsessed with a microscopic detail of a project that had already been approved by the client in version 12. My God, she whispered, what am I doing with my life? That early morning, Beatrice did something she hadn't done in years. She stopped working without finishing. She shut down the computer, lay down on the bed, and for the first time in a long time really paid attention to what she was feeling. The discovery was disturbing. She could no longer distinguish between doing something well and doing something perfect. The line between healthy excellence and obsessive perfectionism had completely disappeared. Even worse, she realized that she hadn't felt genuine pleasure at work for a long time. Every project was a source of stress, not creativity. Each success was immediately followed by anxiety about the next challenge. Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, talks about how we lose purpose when we obsessively focus on the means rather than the ends. Acronym. Beatrice was living exactly that. She had become so focused on doing everything perfectly that she forgot why she was doing it. In the following days, Beatrice tried to relax her pursuit of perfection, but she discovered something frightening. She didn't know how to do things in a sufficient way instead of perfect. When she tried to deliver a project without obsessively reviewing it, she felt genuine physical anxiety. When she tried to leave the house just organized instead of impeccable, she couldn't concentrate on anything else. Perfectionism had become more than a habit. It was her internal operating system. It was while seeking relief from anxiety that Beatrice discovered meditation. Initially, even meditation became an object of perfectionism. She wanted to meditate perfectly, to have a perfectly calm mind. But her meditation teacher, a 70-year-old man named Roberto, said something that intrigued her. Beatrice, you're trying to meditate like you're building a house with a plan, a schedule, and quality control. But meditation is more like cultivating a garden. You prepare the soil, plant the seed, and then let nature do the work. It was her first introduction to the Taoist concept of Wu Wei, effortless action, flowing with the natural current of things instead of fighting against it. And you? Have you ever stopped to think about how many hours of your week are spent refining things that are already good enough? How many times have you lost the joy of doing something because you were obsessed with making it perfect? Beatrice began her transformation journey by trying to stop being a perfectionist, which ironically became just another project to be executed perfectly. She needed to learn something fundamental. Perfectionism cannot be cured with more perfectionism. It was reading Effortless by Greg McKeown that gave Beatrice her first major revelation. McKeown distinguishes between two ways of achieving results: the path of excessive effort, where Beatrice was living, brute force to overcome obstacles, unnecessary complexity, constant struggle against natural resistance, exhaustion as a measure of dedication. The path of natural effort, where she wanted to arrive, working with the natural resistance of things, elegant simplicity, finding the natural rhythm of processes, sustainable efficiency. Beatrice decided to conduct a radical experiment for her standards, to deliver a project when it was 80% perfect instead of 110%. The client was a small clothing store that needed a simple digital menu. Usually, Beatrice would spend a week creating 15 different versions, testing dozens of color combinations, and losing sleep over microscopic details. This time, she gave herself 3 days and a strict rule. When she reached a good enough result, she would stop. The first moments were torturous. Beatrice's inner voice constantly shouted, "This color isn't exactly right. Typography could be more harmonious. The client will think you didn't put in enough effort." But something interesting happened. Instead of suppressing this anxiety, Beatrice started observing it with curiosity, as she had learned in meditation. Interesting, she thought. This is the voice of my perfectionism. It's trying to protect me from something. What could it be? Observing her anxiety without judgment, Beatrice began to identify the unconscious beliefs fueling her perfectionism. My value as a person depends on the quality of my work. If it's not perfect, people will reject me. Relaxing standards is the first step toward total failure. Other people naturally do everything better than I do. As Robert Cialdini explains in Influence the Psychology of Persuasion, these beliefs acted as automatic triggers that activated compulsive behaviors without her realizing it. When Beatrice delivered the 80% perfect project in 3 days, the client responded in 20 minutes, "Perfect, exactly what I wanted. You're a genius." Beatrice stared at the email for 5 full minutes. The work she considered just satisfactory had been received as exceptional. Most importantly, she had saved 4 days of obsessive work and still had energy for other things. Inspired by this first success, Beatrice began to study more deeply the Taoist philosophy of Wu Wei, often translated as non action, but which actually means effortless action. The Tao Te Ching teaches water overcomes the hardest rock not by force, but by gentle persistence. Beatrice realized she had spent years trying to be the rock, hard, resistant, controlling. Maybe it was time to learn to be water, fluid, adaptable, effective. I will teach an exercise that changed Beatrice's life and can transform yours too. Week 1, Resistance Mapping. Identify 3 projects, tasks that you are avoiding or unnecessarily complicating. For each, ask, where am I creating unnecessary complexity? What am I trying to prove with this perfection? What would be the 80% good version of this task? Try doing one of them at 80% and observe, what do you feel physically? What inner voices appear? What is the actual reaction of others? Write everything down. Awareness is the first step to change. Applying the principles of effortless living, Beatrice began completely restructuring her professional approach. Before, accepted every project, worked 12 hours a day, obsessively revised. After, selected projects aligned with her style, worked 6 focused hours, delivered a solid first version. The result, her productivity doubled and her professional satisfaction tripled. When she stopped forcing perfection, Beatrice rediscovered something she had lost, the flow state. As Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi described, flow is that state where we lose track of time because we are completely absorbed in a challenging but not impossible activity. Beatrice realized that perfectionism was killing the flow because it created excessive self awareness. When she was obsessed with doing it right, she couldn't get lost in the creative process. Beatrice's second major breakthrough came when she discovered that simplicity is not a lack of sophistication, it is distilled sophistication. Beatrice's apartment was organized, but in a tense and artificial way. Every object had its specific function, but the whole did not breathe. It was like a showroom, not a home. Inspired by minimalist principles and Zen philosophy, Beatrice decided to apply the concept of effortless to her physical space. Instead of trying to organize everything perfectly, she started asking herself, what really needs to be here? What brings peace versus what brings anxiety? Beatrice implemented what she called breathing space. Each room would have only the essentials plus one element of beauty. Empty surfaces were more important than organized surfaces. Functionality came before decoration. Intentional imperfections were welcome. A slightly crooked plant, an open book on the table. Something magical happened when Beatrice stopped trying to control every detail of the environment. She started truly inhabiting it. Before, she was constantly tidying, adjusting, maintaining. After, she simply lived. The house became a reflection of who she was, not who she thought she should be. Daniel noticed immediately, wow, now I feel comfortable to mess around a bit here. Before I was afraid to touch anything. The transformation in the physical space immediately reflected in Beatrice's work. She began to create cleaner, more breathable, more impactful designs. Instead of adding elements to showcase technical skill, she started removing everything that wasn't essential. Less truly became more. Her clients began to receive comments like, "This is so elegant. How did you manage to say so much with so little?" Beatrice discovered a Zen teaching that changed her perspective. The value of a vase is not in the clay but in the empty space it contains. She applied this to everything. In her schedule, empty spaces were as important as appointments. In conversations, pauses were as valuable as words. In projects, what she didn't include was as important as what she did include. Beatrice developed a simple yet powerful technique for any situation where she felt tempted to complicate. The three circles of simplicity: inner circle, essential, what is absolutely necessary to function; middle circle, desirable, what would improve the experience but isn't crucial; outer circle, ornamental, what is just decorative or to impress others. The rule: always start with the inner circle. Only add from the middle circle if time, energy allows. Ignore the outer circle in the first version. Test this on any project you're unnecessarily complicating. The results will surprise you. The intentional simplicity approach also transformed Beatrice's relationships. With Daniel, instead of planning elaborate dates, they began to enjoy simple conversations on the couch, aimless walks, imperfect dinners made together. With friends, she stopped being the official organizer of everything. She started suggesting simple meetups. Want to come over for coffee instead of let's dine at that new restaurant I saw on Instagram. With herself, her internal dialogue became gentler. Instead of constantly criticizing herself, she started treating herself like she would a good friend. It was by studying the Japanese aesthetic of wabi-sabi that Beatrice found a new definition of perfection: beauty in impermanence, imperfection, and incompleteness. She started to see beauty in projects that had personality, not just technical precision; spontaneous moments that couldn't be repeated; conversations that flowed naturally without a script; meals made with ingredients she had at home; plans that changed according to the moment. Beatrice's third great leap was rediscovering that the process can be more rewarding than the result. Beatrice realized she was living what Greg McKeown calls the infinite goal syndrome. As soon as she achieved one goal, she immediately created a bigger one, never stopping to appreciate what she had accomplished. She finished a project and was already thinking about the next. She organized the house and already saw what needed improvement. She received a compliment and immediately focused on what she could have done better. She was always arriving, never truly arrived. Inspired by Buddhist teachings on mindfulness, Beatrice began to practice full presence during work. Instead of drawing thinking about how the client would react, she started drawing paying attention to the pleasure of seeing the forms take shape. Instead of writing thinking about the final result, she began to savor the process of finding the right word. Beatrice established what she called micro celebrations. When she finished a stage of a project, she would pause for 2 minutes to appreciate what she had done. When she solved a creative problem, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before moving on to the next. When she received positive feedback, she truly absorbed the compliment instead of dismissing it immediately. One of the most profound changes was in the relationship with time. Beatrice always lived against time, never enough, always late, mentally, even when physically arriving early. She began to experiment with living in sync with time, created realistic schedules with breathing room, included time for pauses and reflection, accepted that some things would take longer than planned, found natural rhythms instead of forcing artificial speed. Beatrice discovered that there are two types of time: time, quantitative, chronological, measurable, finite, time, qualitative, subjective, expandable through presence, infinite. When she was present in the process, 2 hours felt like 5 minutes. When anxious about the outcome, 5 minutes felt like 2 hours. A practice that revolutionized Beatrice's life. The process journal. For a week, write down morning, what process will I savor today, not what result I will achieve. During, when do I get lost in the process? When do I fixate on the result? Night, which moment of the process brought the most satisfaction today? Beatrice's example. Morning, I will savor the process of choosing colors for this logo. During, I completely lost myself testing combinations for 30 minutes. It was delightful. Night. The best moment was when the perfect color appeared and I felt that internal click. This trains your brain to find pleasure in the doing, not just in having done. Tao Te Ching teaches a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Beatrice came to interpret this not as focus on the first step to reach the destination, but as each step is a journey in itself. Every moment of work became complete, not just a means to an end. Beatrice's last and most crucial lesson was discovering that it is possible to maintain high standards without destructive perfectionism. Beatrice realized she had confused two completely different concepts: perfectionism, unrealistically high standards motivated by fear of judgment and need for control; excellence, commitment to doing your best within real circumstances, motivated by love for work and personal growth. Instead of asking, is it perfect? Beatrice began to ask herself, does it serve the purpose? Does it solve the problem it should solve? Does it reflect my best at this moment, given my current time, energy, and resources? Can I be proud of the process? Did I work with integrity and presence? Did I contribute to something greater? Does it add real value to the world? Beatrice developed the concept of sustainable excellence, maintaining high standards in a way that does not exhaust her creativity or well being. Principles of sustainable excellence are: focus on the essence, identify the 20% of the project that creates 80% of the impact, smart iteration, improve in versions, not seek perfection on the first attempt, real feedback, validate with real users, not with an internal critic, energy preserved, keep reserves for long term sustainability. Beatrice found great wisdom in the teachings of Marcus Aurelius. Accept the progress you have made and be kind to yourself. She applied the Stoic control dichotomy to work. I can control my effort and dedication, the quality of my presence during work, my willingness to learn and improve, my decisions about when something is ready. I cannot control the exact reaction of clients, comparisons made by others, absolute perfection in all details, results beyond my honest effort, the quality milestones system. Instead of seeking absolute perfection, Beatrice established specific quality milestones for different types of projects. Simple project. Does it work as it should? Is it visually harmonious? Would I deliver it to a friend without embarrassment? Important project. Milestones of the simple project. Does it represent my best current work? Would I add it to my portfolio? Special project. Milestones of the important project. Does challenging my skills in a healthy way contribute to my growth as a professional? Paradoxically, when Beatrice stopped obsessively pursuing perfection, her results significantly improved. Productivity, she doubled the number of completed projects. Perceived quality, clients praised the elegance and clarity of her work more. Creativity, she resumed experimenting and innovating without fear. Job satisfaction, she rediscovered genuine pleasure in her work. Sustainability, she maintained energy for personal projects. Create your own system of quality milestones. Step 1. Identify 3 types of situations where you tend to perfectionism: work, home, relationships, etc. Step 2, for each type, define 3 to 5 objective criteria of well done. Functional criteria: does it work as it should? Aesthetic criteria: is it harmonious? Personal criteria: am I proud of the process? Step 3, when all milestones are reached, stop, declare done, and move on to the next thing. Step 4, observe the difference in your energy, productivity, and satisfaction. This system has kept Beatrice from relapsing into perfectionism to this day. 18 months after that night when Daniel found Beatrice obsessed with the curve of a logo, she had become a fundamentally different person, not because she changed who she was, but because she finally allowed who she always was to flourish naturally. What changed externally? Professionally, Beatrice now worked only 6 hours a day but produced higher quality work. She had a waiting list of clients and was able to charge 40% more because she delivered exceptional results consistently and sustainably. In her relationship, Daniel and Beatrice got married in a small, imperfect ceremony that was exactly how they dreamed. She had learned to accept help without trying to control how things were done. Socially, her friendships deepened because she stopped trying to impress and started to be genuinely present. She discovered the joy of imperfect conversations and spontaneous meetings. At home, the apartment was breathing. It was organized but cozy, functional but with personality. It received visitors without stress and could relax in its own space. With herself, Beatrice developed a gentle inner voice. She treated herself as she would a dear friend, with compassion, realism, and encouragement. What changed internally? External changes were just reflections of a deep internal transformation. Self-compassion replaced fierce self-criticism with firm kindness towards herself. Presence lives in the present moment, not constantly projecting future catastrophes. Confidence trusts her own judgment about when something is good enough. Flow navigates life like water, adaptable, persistent, but not rigid. Purpose knows why she does what she does, not just to do it perfectly. Gratitude genuinely appreciates what she has, not just focusing on what can be improved. The 7 tools that transformed Beatrice. 1. The morning ritual of intent diary. Instead of waking up already anxious about the to-do list, Beatrice started each day asking, how do I want to feel today? What process will I savor? What is truly important today? 2. The practice of 80% and done, project by project. For each task, she identified when she reached 80% and consciously stopped refining unless there was a specific objective reason to continue. 3. The simplicity check-in weekly. Every Friday, she asked, where did I unnecessarily complicate things this week? Which part of my schedule, space, work needs to be simplified? What can I remove to create more breathing room? 4. The process meditation daily. 15 minutes observing her own mind during a simple activity, washing dishes, walking, drawing, noticing when she disconnected from the present. 5. The Excellence versus Perfectionism Journal weekly. Sometimes I chose sustainable excellence versus moments when I fell back into perfectionism, observing patterns without judgment. 6. The practice of intentional imperfection monthly. Consciously did something imperfect, sent an email with a small mistake, left a plant slightly crooked, wore an outfit that didn't match perfectly, to desensitize the fear of imperfection. 7. The circle of gratitude for the process, evening. Before sleeping, identified 3 moments of the day when I felt pleasure in the process of doing something, not just in the result. Beatrice discovered the greatest paradox of the pursuit of perfection, When we stop obsessively chasing perfection, our lives genuinely become closer to perfection, not because everything becomes perfect in the traditional sense, but because we find harmony between effort and flow, between care and detachment, between doing our best and accepting what emerges. As the Tao Te Ching teaches, great perfection seems imperfect, but its usefulness is inexhaustible. For Beatrice, success was no longer doing everything perfectly. It was sustainability, maintaining high quality without burning out, authenticity, expressing who she truly is through her work, presence, being fully where she is when she is there, growth, evolving without punishing herself for not being perfect, contribution, adding real value to the world, not just impressing. Beatrice's transformation created positive waves around her. Daniel learned to relax his own perfectionist standards by watching her thrive in flow. Her clients began to embrace simpler, more impactful designs in their own projects. Her friends felt permission to be more authentic in their gatherings, creating deeper connections. Her family noticed she was more present and less controlling during visits. Beatrice had become a living example that it's possible to maintain high standards while living lightly. For you who recognized yourself in Beatrice, if you saw yourself in Beatrice's journey, if you've also spent hours refining details no one would notice, if you've canceled plans because things weren't perfect, I want you to know a liberating truth. Your worth doesn't depend on your perfection. You don't need to be perfect to be loved, respected, successful, or happy. In fact, your imperfect humanity is exactly what makes you unique and valuable. 5 truths that changed Beatrice's life. Good enough, well executed beats perfect that never ends. The process can be more rewarding than the result. Simplicity is sophistication, not lack of care. Your internal standards are more important than external approval. Flow produces better results than force. I propose that you try for the next 21 days to live as Beatrice learned to live. Week 1, awareness. Observe without judgment where you unnecessarily complicate things. Write down situations where perfectionism appears. Practice asking, does this need to be perfect or just work? Week 2, experimentation. Choose 3 situations to apply the 80% and done rule. Practice intentional simplicity in one aspect of life. Try to find pleasure in the process, not just the outcome. Week 3, integration. Develop your own quality milestones, celebrate imperfections that work, observe how others react to your new flow. Beatrice told me that a question completely changed her relationship with perfection. If I were to give this advice to my best friend, what would I say? When she applied this question to her own situations, she realized how hard she was on herself in ways she would never be with someone she loved. If Beatrice's story resonated with you and you're ready to swap perfectionist paralysis for productive flow, tell me in the comments. In which area of your life do you most need to apply the 80% and done principle? It could be at work, in relationships, at home, or in personal projects. Identify one area and commit to trying it for a week. And if you want more content on how to live with excellence without obsession, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every week, we explore together the paths to a more fluid, authentic, and sustainably successful life. Remember the wisdom that transformed Beatrice. You don't need to be perfect to be extraordinary. You just need to be genuinely yourself, doing your best within your real circumstances. And that's already more than enough. Until the next video, and thank you for allowing me to share Beatrice's inspiring journey with you.